and we actually get and sort of debunk the myths around the dangers of animal foods, which are essentially completely mythologic fairy tale creatures. There are no real dangers to animal foods if we look into it. There's no evidence for dangers, including colon cancer, the heart disease stuff. Yeah. It just doesn't bear out when we look at the literature. It's just
that's why it makes me think it's a propaganda machine, because that shit, where is that coming from? Like, really? Really, someone had to actively come up with these ideas.
Often repeated, poorly understood epidemiology studies which say nothing about real human physiology.
You know what I love?
Sapien. Sapien living.
What is the Sapien lifestyle?
Mind, body, and spirits.
All right, we're going to have a combined intro on this one. We got Dr. Gary here, live from Evolve Healthcare. What's up, man?
Hey, everybody. So excited. We're going to be introducing our new podcast with Dr. Paul Saladino. Really excited to share this one with you guys. It was a really interesting talk, and I learned so much from Paul. And, a couple things that we disagreed on, but that's all part of the fun. We also want to remind everyone, come support us at our big documentary project, Food Lies. You can check us out at food.lies on Instagram. Also support Brian, his food delivery company, nosetotale.org. Provide great quality meat from farmers here in Texas. And if you want to learn more about us, check us out, sapien.org. We have a ton of information on there. Brian's constantly updating it, and it's a really great resource. And then lastly, if you want to know more about me, Dr. Gary Schliffer, you could check me out at evolvehealthcare.com. I have a clinic here in Woodland Hills, California, and really trying to promote the Sapien Diet. And yeah, looking forward to sharing this new podcast with all of you.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. You did all my ads for me, but we wanted to hear about the story of the conference, and a lot of people have been asking me what happened and want kind of a breakdown. So I thought this would be a good format for me to just kind of talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you that don't know, Brian participated in this big food conference where he actually participated in a debate with a I guess a vegan person, whatever you want to call that. Well, and so tell us about it, Brian. It's really exciting stuff.
It was big. It was a big conference. Like, big people spoke there. You know, the CEOs of like big fake meat companies were there. Tyson Chicken was there, and Impossible Foods. All these kind of players were there. And they had me do a presentation on including more meat in the diet, not less, because everything else was 100% against meat. So I felt very like outsider, everyone was against me. It was a weird thing, but it went really well. Like, so this vegan lady wasn't actually a vegan, for one thing. It's kind of funny. They pitched us as vegan versus carnivore. I'm not carnivore. She's not vegan. She actually eats a decent diet. We ended up spending a long time together. She doesn't eat any refined grains or sugars, no processed foods. She eats sustainably raised fish and pasture raised dairy and eggs. I was like, all right, well, that's just a good diet.
So what are we arguing about?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, you eat a good diet and you're just weird because you don't want to eat red meat. You know, like, you just don't know that red meat's fine. That's the only problem. But then she was very abrasive, actually. We ended up having to spend a lot of time together kind of on accident. And we were there before our talk, and we just were kind of forced to eat lunch together. And we got along decently well, but she just didn't understand any of this. She's never heard this other side. It was so interesting to talk to this woman she works for some organization called Friends of the Earth or Friends of the Animals or something. And it's her whole life is traveling around trying to stop people from doing animal agriculture.
Can I ask you a quick question though?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, she eats a lot of animal products. So is it really her organization and her argument is really against red meat specifically?
It's against any animal agriculture. Her main message is they're against factory farming, which is fine. I'm for that too, right? I'm against that. We need to go towards a sustainable future, and regenerative farming and all that. But I was kind of trying to back up the point that we're in a system now. This is what it is. And we have to live with it, and we have to change and work towards something better. But what we have now is not that bad. It's like, if you can afford, all you can afford is grocery store ground beef, then get that. That's healthier than anything else in the store. Right. So that's one of my main messages. I'm a little worried about releasing this video of my speech because I'm kind of backing up factory farming a little bit, which I don't want to do, but I'm having to back it up because there's so many people who can only afford to eat standard food. And I want to let them know that it's perfectly healthy. This is all tested. Yeah. Like there's no, people think there's antibiotics in meat. They think it's like hormones and poison in your meat. No, it's like, there's not, and it's all tested. And if there was some in a feedlot for a couple months, it's just this tiny little bit that's taken out. You know, it's what they have a withdrawal period.
Look, I have to say, I'm very excited for you to share this because I know you learned a lot preparing for this talk, and I learned so much listening to you and kind of sharing all this new information. I definitely think people need to hear even the stuff that's hard to hear about feedlots, like the vilification of the food system, not just meat, but the whole agriculture system, leads to a lot of misunderstandings, right? And so even people that get it need to know more about what current system is if we're going to make any meaningful change, right?
Yeah.
So I just think that all the information, it can't be a culture of fear. It cannot just be fear mongering and then all of these emotional reactions that are fear driven, but instead we need to use our brains and we need to use our best science and our best judgment. And I think that's the message, at least that I got from the talk that you shared with me.
Yeah, exactly. And I talked to Dr. Sarah Place on the Peak Human podcast, Dr. Frank Mitloner. These people were great and helping me prepare and giving me all this information and kind of it helped me not feel scared about eating normal meat. It's like, and I've also talked to farmers, ranchers on Instagram and Facebook. They reach out to me and like, hey, I am part of the conventional food system, but I do everything well. All my animals are cared for. They're all mostly grass fed. And then, they get some different things. They get distillers leftovers and they get some corn that's like leftover from making biofuels. And then they make it into the grocery store and it's just fine. And there's nothing wrong with it. And everything's legit. Everything's tested. So it's just crazy that we just have this idea. Even there's so many people in our world that it's almost an automatic statement. Oh yeah, well we're not going to eat grocery store meat shot up with antibiotics and hormones. And that's people just say that. They accept that as fact and they don't know what they're talking about. Right?
And that's the interesting part.
I was one of those people. Until like a couple months ago too. Right? I was like, of course, so there's many reasons to eat grass finished meat from a local farmer. 100% support that, but it's just not a black or white situation. So
and I have to also, I think it would be remiss just the timeliness of it today. We're recording. It's October 1st, and just today,
yesterday,
one of the more today, one of the more conservative physician groups in America, the Internal Medicine Group, published in the Annals of Internal Medicine a research study that reviewed that actually includes 5 different reviews. So including hundreds and hundreds of studies, thousands and thousands of patients. And what they did was they looked at the idea that meat, specifically red meat, is bad for you. And their conclusion was that it is not bad for you. They proved sort of the null hypothesis of what these vegetarians and vegan people are trying to say, is that meat is bad. And this was a very powerful study. This was picked up by all sorts of major news publications like the New York Times. And the message, and again, it's confusing for people, but to simplify it, the message is meat is not associated with disease. And again, we're talking about associations, but for sure, if there's no association, then there is no causation. And this is really important because it's, again, proving the null hypothesis that there is no negative effect. The next step, of course, will be to show sort of what we believe, which is meat is the anchor point of a healthy diet, and that, a true Sapien diet is based in animal foods, especially healthy animal foods, specifically good, healthy protein with fat. But, I wish that research had come out before your talk, because I think you would have had even more firepower. But huge.
It would be huge.
It's happening. Like, guys that are listening, like the tide is turning. You've got, one of the most reputable groups of physicians in our country. I'm a member of that group, the internal medicine physicians, are coming out and vocally sort of supporting what we're having to say. Now, there's some issues with that study. They made a couple comments about the ethics and the environmental impacts that can be discussed, but that wasn't the research they were reviewing. Let's all remember, they were reviewing all of the evidence that suggests that meat causes disease, meat carries a risk of cardiovascular disease, meat carries a risk of cancer, et cetera, et cetera. It essentially is refuting the World Health Organization statement from a few years ago saying that there's a cancer risk. And they even go as far as to say is there is not even a link with processed meat. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that, Brian? I mean, for sure, red meat, we talk about that, but we also always say, let's avoid processed foods. But here in this, study, they're saying, even the processed meat's not so bad for you. What do you think about that?
This is great. This is what I've been saying all along. We're so backwards when it comes to processed meat, and we just lump it in. And I think there's a couple things. Processed meat by itself, like if you're eating corned beef hash and it has a bunch of potatoes in it and other weird ingredients, then no, that's not good. But just processed meat just means it's just meat that's been mashed up, and then maybe there's some celery salt in there, right? As like a nitrate.
Right,
So there's more nitrates in like plant foods than there are in meat. So I don't really understand the problem with cured meats and stuff like that. And yeah, you can not use nitrates, and you can use celery salt or celery substance
Natural
from
thing.
celery, and it's just natural. It's like, okay, well, there's no real difference. It's doing the same thing. It's just nitrates. So what's the big problem? And two, I think the big association that was seen with processed meats is you're way more likely to be eating junk with processed meats. Like you don't eat a hot dog without a bun. You don't, you know what I mean? Like all the things associated, people eat just ground beef and steak without a bun, like the whole meats. Okay, ground beef's not a good example because people eat those with buns, but any whole meats.
Except us sapien people, right?
Yeah, except the sapien people.
I don't have time for a bun with my hamburger.
Yeah, you get a sausage. You can eat a sausage with a bun. That's what I do all the time. So I think that's just the biggest. It's just that correlation. So I don't think processed meats are that bad, but also I think whole regular meats are way better. I always feel better eating them. I always, everything just is better about it. It's in its more whole form. And I would just say, don't be afraid of processed meats, but don't make it the base of your diet, right? Just add it in. Yeah. It's like, and then nose to tail, we have like really good grass finished sausages that are no nitrates. And, if that's a problem, it's just cured with celery salt. So there's ways
for the record, as we're having this conversation, I get a message from my fiance, and she's like, I'm putting in our next nose to tail order. And she's confirming our nose to tail order. So while I'm promoting your food service, I'm a huge fan myself. I'm a huge fan of the Primal Light. Those of you who haven't tried that, the Primal Light mix is a mix of muscle meat with organ meat, about roughly 30% organ meat, which gives you a really nutritious food product. I'm a huge fan of the lamb. I got the lamb leg. That is amazing. And also just the ground beef. It's just a really high quality food and from American farmers doing it the right way. And, I just think that having a study like this that supports the concept that meat isn't bad for you is just going to be another step in the right direction for people to let go of their, sort of archaic ideas about food and start opening up their mind to the fact that there is a new perspective out there, utilizing all the research that's been done, and there's new research coming, and it all supports a diet founded in whole foods, an animal-based diet. And it's not so simple. It's not as simple as one thing is bad and the other thing is good. It's a complicated thing, and that's why we've committed our careers to educating people. You've really committed your whole life, haven't you, Brian?
I'm all in. I'm all in, and I love it. And I had a consult with a patient that evolved yesterday with Dr. Gary, and it's really fun for me to pick apart her diet and trying to figure it out. And I have to go on a quick soapbox thing. The problem, we kind of made fun of the Keto Fad Diet, and it's not we're saying keto is a fad. We're saying there is such thing as a Keto Fad Diet. It's like the wrong way to do keto, and it's people hear about on the news, and they just do it, and they don't know what it is. And so this woman, thought she was doing the right thing and was eating like cheese and nuts and bulletproof coffees like every hour. So I was like, I'm eating all, Sapien foods. I'm eating all the right foods. I'm like, no, you're just chugging like tons of calories and eating hyper palatable foods. Like, she admitted she couldn't eat like a lot of these. She would eat a lot of these nuts and cheeses, and your body's never in the fasted state. It's always trying to take in those calories and use them. And even if they are healthy fats.
I really think it points out one of the biggest kind of challenges is, I don't have a lot of time with patients. I do primary care, and when I'm using, insurance benefit, I don't have a ton of time with patients. So I introduce them to the Sapien diet and this whole foods, low carbohydrate approach. But again, it's not that simple. You can't package this up in a 10 or 15-minute talk.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, we're having a huge challenge packaging it up into a 2-hour movie, right? Like, this is a really complicated topic to unpack. It's full of misunderstandings. It's full of confusion in the public. It's full of confused doctors and health professionals. And so I do think that, people need to realize that this is a huge education that needs to go through. And every single person that's part of our community, every single person that listens to your podcast and supports the movie, I challenge everyone to educate each other, educate those around you, your family members, your loved ones. This is going to take decades, just like it took decades to get ourselves to this kind of mess of a nutritional state that we're all in. And I'm looking forward to this journey.
Yeah. It's just not as easy. It's hard because I think it's so easy, but it's like, I know I've studied for so long. It seems easy to me. So, okay. Great. I got to jump into this real quick before you go.
Okay.
I got to finish the story. Do it. So all these cell-based meat, everything, the whole conference was about fake meat and plant-based, and this is the future. They were a data company presenting on the future of food trends, and that's what people were going there for. It was all the executives going there to see where they should put their money and their products. And so I was really going against the grain, and I'm glad they at least let me speak. And there's this woman who was tweeted about it and said that I shouldn't even be there. And it was just crazy. And Dr. Ted Nyman came to my back, and there was seriously like 1,000. I got 1,000 messages, likes, and retweets for this one tweet thread of this stupid lady saying I shouldn't be there talking about meat, just supporting a human diet. So it was this really weird experience, but it was pretty nerve wracking. Me getting on stage was like my first big speaking engagement, and it was kind of funny is they just threw me on stage and they got the wrong order of our presentations, and the Food Lies little clip wasn't queued up. So the main conference guy, he's like, just go on stage and kill time. And I'm up there looking at 500 people, like just sitting in their seats and trying to kill time like a stand-up comedian. It was really fun. It kind of went well. It kind of loosened me up, and I kind of joked around with them and kept it moving, and then went into my presentation. I was a lot more relaxed, and I kind of just, had a better presentation. And then it was really sad that they kind of ran out of time and they mismanaged the schedule, and there was only 10 minutes for a debate. So right when I was feeling great, just on top of the world, like ready to go, sat down, and I got a few points across, and then she went crazy and made her points, and then it kind of just ended, and it just wasn't very satisfying. So I'll put the video out if they ever give it to me, but yeah.
Put it out there. Look, I just want to say, as your friend and your business partner and someone who really looks up to you intellectually, I'm really proud of you for really putting yourself out there. I think it took a lot of courage. I think it shows people that, you have to put yourself in a uncomfortable situation to really grow and transcend the status quo. And I think you've been doing that with your messages online, and now to be up in front of all these industry people and really put yourself out there. I think it's really inspiring for a lot of us, especially as health professionals who are afraid sometimes to say what we think because there's so much pushback, and the minority of, this vocal minority of people that vilify meat, they're so aggressive and it's so scary. So I think I can speak for all of your listeners and everyone in this community. Like, thank you for going up there and being that guy and being confident and not letting fear kind of control your behaviors, because I think that's something that we all strive for.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it really was great. And I felt like a real growing experience for me. And it was really cool too to really talk to someone on the other side. And I talked to her for another hour afterwards. We spent hours together that day. And so another hour, we went off backstage and we kept talking because everyone else was still watching the other presentations and we were just kind of stranded there. And I got through to her on a lot of things. I mean, she didn't change her mind per se, but she opened her mind. She tried so hard to, get me to, I got nothing from her, like 0% did she add to my understanding. I knew all the stuff she was talking about. I knew it was all bogus. But I opened her mind a lot. I told her about Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson. She had no idea people were healing from meat. Told her about all the people I meet, even at the meetup. We had a great meetup on Monday night in Chicago at a Brazilian barbecue, and awesome people came there. A woman was raised vegan her whole life and had every problem under the sun. She was a nightmare, falling apart, and she finally found meat and is on our healing journey. So many stories I was letting this woman know, and she was just like, huh. And then I would tell her about her bogus epidemiology. And she, she's like, oh, what about this study? I'm like, you realize this epidemiology. She didn't even understand the difference, really. And then I showed her Tara Couture at Slowdown Farmstead, the best Instagram account in the game. And she was like, what? Oh my God, this woman is 50? This woman looks great. And she's a nutritionist and she's eating all meat. She couldn't figure it out.
Tara's amazing.
Tara's amazing. She could not figure out, this woman, Kari, could not figure out that Tara was healthy, strong, eating only animal foods. I showed her Mark Sisson. She was about to take my phone to the bathroom once she saw Mark Sisson. I gave her some Google images and she's like, so this guy he eats a lot of animal foods? I'm like, yeah, I mean, he eats basically vegetables and meat, fish, eggs, meat. So by the end of it, she was really interested kind of in what I was saying, but they're just stuck in their ways. This woman, wasn't doing well either. Like, she thought I was 25 and I'm like, no, I'm 36. And she's like, well, how? And I'm like, well, I eat animal foods. And then I thought she was 66 and said she was like 55. So it's pretty funny, the different lifestyles. And she doesn't eat any processed foods or sugars or grains. And it looks very unhealthy, which is just telling to me. But oh, okay. Well, we got to wrap this up. So
I'm so excited to see this talk, Brian. We can't wait. But in a short time, I think people are ready to hear us talk to Paul and learn a little bit about the carnivore.
Okay, the ending to my story is that then I started eating fermented shark and durian and balut, and I had a scorpion and ants and bugs, and then I got food poisoning. But that was just a funny ending.
Brian ate some extremely fermented shark and got sick. Then texted me in the middle of the night because he was on his deathbed. So don't eat fermented shark.
Okay. So but to this episode, to wrap it up, it was so great to talk to Paul in person. He came to the office right before we shot with him for Food Lies. It got a little weird at the end, and I think I don't think we need to intro it. Just listen to it. It's just, people just have different opinions. And, our idea at Sapien is to enjoy life. And maybe, if you have something on the weekends, you can have a birthday cake. If it's your daughter's birthday, you can, it's all about moderation. And, I was about coffee is what we got into. And I drink coffee. I drink black coffee. So,
there's a lot of things to unpack. There's a lot of things to unpack, but let's suffice it to say, Paul's a brilliant guy. He's got a ton of great information when it comes to understanding metabolism and understanding food. And it was really great talking to him. And we hope you guys learned something from our podcast.
All right, let's do it. Let's watch it.
Let's do it. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Rock and roll.
Let's start going. We're recording. We're live for the Sapien podcast, number 2. We got special guest, Paul Saladino, MD. He's here filming with us for Food Lies, and now we're going to do an hour podcast with him and ask him about carnivore diet and why plant foods may not necessarily be all they're cracked up to be. And a lot of stuff.
All kinds of good stuff.
You ready?
Let's roll, yeah.
All right, you went live too?
I'm going live on
Oh,
my
we're
Instagram
going
too.
double live.
Double live.
I don't even go live, but I'm gonna go live just to be part
Oh,
of it.
No, there's too many lives.
Everybody's
Too many
going
lives.
live.
Too many lives.
Everybody's going live.
All right, so yeah, we didn't really
I'm all
plan.
live.
We didn't really plan a whole intro or anything, but Gary.
Cue theme music. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Gary Schliffer. I'm an internal medicine doctor, and I work with Brian on our Sapien company. Our focus is to try to educate people and spread the word that Paul is doing about healthy diet and lifestyle, and kind of move the dial on the general understanding about what to eat, what not to eat, and how to live your life so that you avoid chronic medical disease.
Root cause medicine.
Root cause medicine, performance medicine. A lot of people call it functional medicine. I know Paul's got training in that specifically. But I'm just trying to figure out how to keep people out of the hospital and doing their best. That's really where I'm focused at.
Well, yeah, and that's what Paul's trying to do. And I guess we should start asking him some questions. He's our guest.
Hey, Paul.
Hey guys.
Hey, what's up, dude?
What's up?
And Gary's going to do this one. So I already had Paul on my Peak Human podcast, and we did 4 hours. So I got enough.
Which is excellent, by the way. I learned so much good stuff, you guys. Fiber,
Not
gone. I don't even know what it is anymore.
Who needs it?
What
Dead
is
to
fiber?
fiber. I'm dead to fiber. Fiber's dead to me.
What is kale?
Dead to me.
Dead to-
Kale. I'm dead to kale.
I stare at broccoli. I'm like, what is it doing? What are you going to do for me?
We were in the grocery store yesterday, and I was walking through the grocery store, and I was telling these guys, like, 98% of the grocery store now, I'm just like, I don't need any of this stuff anymore. It's just superfluous. I just walk through the grocery store doing the Drake meme where I just hold my hand. I'm like, I don't need you. Like, I'm good. I got.
But then are you in the freezer section looking for your liver and your pancreas? Because that's the crazy part, is it's hard to find some of the stuff you're into.
It is hard to find some of the organ meats, but what I'm learning is that, like, butcher shops are amazing, and this return to, like, ways of old, European ideals, or probably like where you grew up in Russia, there were like butcher shops. I mean, that's the way we used to do it. There were like butcher shops, and that's a fantastic resource for people to know. They can go to butcher shops and get good stuff there. That's what I've been doing since I've been in Los Angeles and San Diego this past week, is looking for liver and beef fat trimmings and other organs, whatever I can get at butcher shops.
Yeah, like what we were talking about, I grew up eating a lot of this stuff as part of my ancestral or my cultural diet, right? So I'm Russian, and eating organ meat and fish eggs and all the kind of itty gritty stuff that Americans tend to avoid. That was my childhood. So it was very surprising a few years ago when me and Brian started talking about this stuff, and I realized that the food of my childhood is actually medicine, right? And so, I guess, as someone who ate this food my whole life, and you guys just kind of started, do you have a palate for it? Are you eating it really like a supplement, where you're taking that scoop of fish roe and it's going down and you feel good about it, but you're not really enjoying it? Like, what's the experience like for you guys?
I mean, for me, salmon roe is pretty easy. Liver's been an acquired taste. I think once you get to, the point that you can tolerate raw liver, you've gotten pretty strong. But it's so interesting to think about. I have a 1-year-old niece, and I'm always encouraging my sister to feed her liver and feed her things that are unusual for modern westernized Americans. And I think that unless we eat organ meats as a child, we're not used to those sort of
The grainy,
irony tastes. And if you ate them as a kid, a lot of people really love liver, and they just
It's
love
my favorite food in the world.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my God. Caviar and liver are the two of my favorite things in the world.
And
Period.
like on my social media platforms, interacting with people on social media, what I generally find is that salmon roe and liver are two of the hardest things to get people to eat. They just think, oh, I don't like the texture, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. I don't like the taste. And it's just, I think we grow up with these sort of anemic palates. We grow up with these underdeveloped palates, and we're not used to the taste of liver. We're not used to the taste of organ meats. We're not used to the taste of salmon roe. But these are so valuable for humans nutritionally. And I think that a great service that we can do to our future generations is feed them animals nose to tail from a young age.
I love it.
Yeah, well, I'll do my side is, I was scared of anything.
I remember
growing
you
up
in college, man.
Well, I wouldn't
You were
eat,
eating
no,
that shit.
like even before that, I thought I would only eat like plain white chicken. Like growing up, it was just, anything else was gross. I wouldn't even eat like a drumstick because it was just all the bits and pieces on the end.
All the chewy bits.
Yeah. And then now I'm looking for those and I'm enjoying those. And it wasn't that hard to transition. I think there's always delicious ways to cook it. If you use fat, I mean, I just cooked chicken hearts, liver, buffalo with organs, and I just use bacon fat, or I use some salt. It's like if you salt it correctly and have fat, you can't go wrong.
Do you guys remember, I think we're probably the same age, but do you remember Doug? That show Doug on Nickelodeon? It's a TV show on Nickelodeon about like a kid growing up. And I remember every episode, his mom made him eat liver and onions, and it was like the worst thing ever. And they vilified it. I mean, looking back on it, I remember they vilified it. Doug was so afraid of liver, and it was always the worst, smelliest thing. And I'm like this little kid sitting there, man, I look forward to that like dinner every week.
It's framing.
It's so, it just,
or it's,
we were
what you're used to
hate this stuff.
But we talked about, we just filmed for Food Lies with Paul, and we talked about, well, just what we're used to now doesn't mean that that's normal, right? Just because it is normal to eat McDonald's and to have a whole bunch of pasta and bread with every meal, that doesn't mean it's normal for humans. That's just what you're used to. And so depending on where you grew up, it's normal to eat fish eggs, right? You did that. But if you grew up in the Inuit culture, you would be eating like seal meats and fat and just
blubber.
Doing, and that's normal. So people just need to reframe what they think is normal.
Yeah, I love that concept of just reconsidering everything you think you know. There's this meme from the Matrix when it's like, I think it's, or Morpheus or someone saying like, forget everything you think you know. And I love that concept when we're thinking about carnivore diets or animal-based diets or where nutrition comes from or what foods are healthy versus not healthy. We just need to start from scratch. Think about where the nutrient density is, think about where the most bioavailable things are in terms of food, think about where the toxins are, the things we need to avoid. And pretty quickly, if you do that sort of an equation, you come to a mostly animal-based diet. And it may be different than what we're used to doing, and that doesn't mean that it's wrong, but this concept of what we're normally doing is clearly what we're normally doing as Westernized humans is not working. And so just because it's different than what we're used to doesn't mean that it's wrong. And it just requires a little bit of open-mindedness to take that next step for people. And that can be challenging, but it's a good growth.
I think it's so important what you're doing, Paul, with the carnivore movement, because while me and Brian talk about a Sapien diet, which is a little bit different than specifically a carnivore movement, I think the heart of it is an animal-based diet, right? And the thing I've noticed, at least in my clinical practice with patients, is that concept. It seems like this concept of a plant-based diet being the only healthy diet is so rooted in everyone's psyche. Like, forget about just talking about nutrient density or macros, whatever, right? It's just this idea of only plants are the good thing and animals are bad. And they don't even know why. People don't even know why. Like, saturated fat and the lies about that, whatever. It's just they can't accept that we're an animal and you should be eating things similar to you. That's probably how it was meant to be. And eating this other foreign substance, which is what plants are in a way, might not be the best option, or might, as you put it, be what do you call it? Like a starvation or a survival diet. I love that concept. Either a survival diet or it's like a vestige of our ancestry, right? Like from our primate beginnings and then whatever, all the steps that it took to
fallback foods.
Yeah, fallback foods. I love that concept because whether or not you agree with your diet approach, like carnivore, the concept of, animal diet being the heart of what makes us healthy and then plant-based diet likely not being our optimal food source, that's a no-brainer to me, right? But that's the hardest thing to get people to even have the conversation. So what's your experience been like as you've gained a lot of popularity in this movement?
Well, I think it's really interesting. I love that concept. And I think that if people are listening to this and they fall into that group of people where they think of plant foods as just intrinsically healthy and they think of animal foods as unhealthy, I would challenge them to ask why they think that, Yeah. And I think it's important to examine what our hesitancies are around eating animal foods. And what we quickly realize is that that is not based on sound science, that is based on opinion,
Myth.
that is based on myth, that is based on fairy tale, that is based on misinterpretation of scientific data. And that is a tragedy because animal foods, when we look at the facts, are in fact quite nutritious and health promoting, but that is such a foreign concept. And unfortunately, I think that the plant-based propaganda machine is very strong. And there are all sorts of theories about what is driving the
This
plant-based
is my next question.
propaganda
Is it
machine. Absolutely.
on purpose? What's the word? Is
Deliberate? What do you mean? This was like
was this
conspiracy?
Conspiracy. That's the word. Is this a conspiracy, or is this just a series of unfortunate events that led this westernized diet to spread across the world? Right. I've read a lot of books. The most influential was Big Fat Surprise. Nina Teicholz. She just kills it. Gives all this amazing history. And after knowing all that history, I'm still left with the question of did some religious organization or powerful organization set things down this path, or is this just how things, how the cookie crumbled, as they say? No pun intended.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it's, if you look at the history of it, it sure looks like there were forces at play in terms of the legislation and the guidelines over the last 70 to 80 years. It looks like there was religious involvement with the Seventh-day Adventists and concerned about the carnal nature of meat. I mean, it's kind of a wild concept. Eating animal foods makes you libidinous, which is sinful, right? I mean, but we could associate being libidinous with a healthy physiology, at some level.
Successful population.
Proper hormone levels.
Proper hormone levels make you have a libido, and that is a healthy thing. But I think that it probably goes back to these Seventh-day Adventist concerns and this sort of hyper-religiosity of the 30s and 40s connected with the Seventh-day Adventists and Kellogg's, and people being concerned about this idea that, if we are healthy, we want to have sex, but ultimately that is a healthy thing for a human to do. We do not need to be chemically castrated. We do not need to be, hormonally castrated by eating a plant-based diet. But if you want to do that, you can achieve that by eliminating nutritious foods. So,
and eliminating all acute stresses, and you're just in this little bubble of carbs and comfort, and your testosterone drops out, and you turn into this weird TV watching blob.
There's a movie about that. There's plenty of movies about that. What's that Disney movie?
Wall-E.
Wall-E, with those it's scary.
Idiocracy touches on this too. I mean, this is not nothing new, but it certainly seems like our generation of physicians, of scientists, of influencers are really getting hip to this concept that, hey, the system's not making us thrive. The way life is now in America, you're not thriving, you're surviving. I came to America as an immigrant, and it was like, you're going to have a better life than your parents. You're going to be healthier. You're going to be more successful. There's going to be more money. And as I've been growing up, I've been watching America take a step backwards when it comes to the rest of the world, economically speaking. And honestly, now from a food standpoint, it's really sad to me. For me, I grew up, again, it's fun to go back to this, but I grew up with a very not sweet palate, or an herbaceous, a savory palate. That was just what all kids in Russia and European countries had. And here, kids are growing up with just a sweet tooth, and I feel bad, I'm going to eat, and snacks are the baseline is multiple snacks a day and multiple desserts a day, and it kills me. It kills me watching my patients, their kids, just crumbling and unwilling to even open up their minds to something like what you're suggesting. What kind of, so I know you're a psychiatric physician. What kind of experience have you had in clinical practice, kind of getting people to turn over or to see your way?
There is no getting people to do anything, right? The best that we can do, I believe the best that we can do as physicians is put the message out there, and people will come to us, right? And once someone comes to us, they've made this magical decision they want to be healthy, and what we're saying resonates with them, and then we offer them the resources. But in my experience, there's no getting anyone to do anything. And if someone isn't ready emotionally, physically, mentally to to make a behavioral change, to embark on a new journey in their life, to have curiosity, I don't even bring it, I think this is what's incredible about podcasting and movies and, social media platforms. And you put the information out there and you see who comes and who's interested.
Yeah.
It's not me finding patients, it's patients finding me.
Right.
So people need to find me, they need to find you, they need to find us. And we have the information, but it's only when they come to us that they're ready for what we're going to suggest to them. So I don't even go looking. And,
I love it. I get it.
Yeah, what's crazy now is that it's happening, that more and more people are finding this. And then when people have incredible improvements, I posted on my social media about a woman who had lupus and fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and cytopenia. She did carnivore diet with a nose to tail perspective and all gone. She went to the oncologist for a bone marrow biopsy and he said, hey, your blood counts are normal. This kind of stuff doesn't happen in my training. I'm curious about your training. I mean, incredibly bad plaque psoriasis, gone, eczema, gone, depression, gone, anxiety, gone, bipolar disorder improved radically. So recalcitrant medical illness is changing with dietary intervention. And those kind of stories are a brush fire that you cannot control. Yeah. That person is going to tell 35 people. Yeah. All of their relatives are going to know. And they're going to say, what the heck happened to your, you had these big things on your arm. You had these psoriatic plaques on your arm. Where did they go? And they say, oh, I changed my diet, and you hear it time and time again. It's thousands of people now. It's tens of thousands. And soon it'll be hundreds of thousands and millions. And at that point, we will not be able to, it'll just be a question of how do we make the information available to the most people?
Like how to train up enough physicians to even be ready for this.
Yeah, that's something. So one of the motivations with this podcast and one of our big goals with working with Brian is to kind of spread this message to more people, right? You've got a viewership, Brian's got a viewership, but when I work with people in the clinic, they're not seeing this stuff, right? The word
they're way out of the loop.
Way out of the loop.
People are coming to you, they're finding you,
like
you said, but no one's just coming in and finding Dr. Gary.
Yeah. So my goal is to, and again, Food Lies is the dream, right? Because what a way to affect hundreds of thousands, millions of people is like a movie, right? Put it on Netflix, everyone starts watching it, right? So my goal is to try to get this message across to more people. So what can we do? You've got a voice, you've got a great tone, you've got obviously the research, and you've really put the thought into this, but where do you see, other than the movie, where do you see, how can we do this? I educate one patient at a time, and it's an uphill battle, right? But I'm also building a community in my office where people get it. People know in the hospital, I'm known as the keto guy, even though I'm not trying to be keto guy. I'm trying to explain to them what a Sapien diet is and what eating normal food is. What else can we do? This is my struggle, right? My struggle is I need guys like you to help be that mouthpiece. I'm trying to be that mouthpiece, but really, how do you get them to listen? What are your thoughts on it? Do you have any tricks?
It's the same. It's this. In Seattle, I work out with people who do movement stuff and gymnastics communities. And one of my friends there said, in terms of his movement training, said, you be so good that people can't ignore you.
Right.
So I feel like that's the idea. You say something that is so incredible and so disruptive and so based in science that people can't ignore you. Be so good that people can't ignore you. They're just I can't even ignore that. How do people even ignore what's happening in the movement right now? And
it's funny. Doctors have ignored the evidence on fiber for decades.
I know.
I don't know. So it's pretty easy to ignore evidence.
But that's not. Yeah, it's just I think you just have to be so good. You just live your life, in a certain way, and then people can't ignore it. And you
show them by example.
Yeah, you put it out there, and it just starts the fire. I think that's the way that I would think of it. That this is happening. There's just more and more podcasts, and I'm recording another podcast tomorrow, and it's happening. It's happening, and the people will find it, and it's not an issue of making it available.
There's a lot of momentum right now, and so we should get some listener questions if there are any before Chrissy has to go. Yeah, want to try to make this kind of an interactive show because part of this we're talking about is we're starting a community. We want to get people behind this.
And those of you who haven't listened to Paul on other podcasts, he was on Brian's Peak Human podcast. think he's got 2 episodes, the first of which just dropped, and the next is coming out next week or whenever you're listening to this. But so much good information.
He was on Ben Greenfield's. He's going on the Minimalist tomorrow. So he has his own podcast too. Fundamental Health.
Yeah, my own podcast is called Fundamental Health with Paul Saladino, MD. And yeah, I've been on about 30 podcasts. So if you search my name on iTunes, you can choose your favorite podcaster in the health and wellness space. And
I think it's
Okay,
me.
interrupt.
All right.
Necessity of organ meats.
That's a debate.
Yeah.
That's perfect thing. So we were at Paleo FX, and it's so cool to go to these conferences and interact with all these people. So we ended up with Mark Sisson and Paul and Sean Baker, and we're all talking like, we're all having this little friendly debate. Do we need to eat organ meats? Can you just eat muscle meats? And we thought we're gonna have a live video, series and start with those 3 guys talking about it. But what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that organ meats are incredibly valuable, unique, and indispensable. They're evolutionarily consistent, and there's no waste with the animal when you eat organ meats. So the first question is, are organ meats harmful? And I think that's clearly the answer is no.
Where did that even come from?
Why are people even asking about organ meats?
What is that?
Well, it's confusing because the liver detoxifies.
Wait. We'll take Brian to medical school here.
I'm talking as an average person.
Oh my God, I hear that so much.
No, that's
It's
what I'm
insane.
saying. Is people talk to me about it. My friends back home, they're like, oh, but that's where all the bad things go in your body.
Right. So just so people know, the liver is not the storage house for all the toxins.
Yeah, it's
The
not
liver-
like a mesh filter that catches stuff. That's insane.
No, it's not a sieve. It does phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification, and some people even create a thing called phase 3, and then it exports the toxins in stool and urine, and you get rid of them, but they're not stored in the liver. And so, I think that a lot of the discussions around whether organ meats are necessary comes from there is a branch of the carnivore community that feels like just meat and water, or meat and eggs and water, is an appropriate carnivorous diet. And though I accept, or though I believe that is a good introduction to a carnivore diet, I don't think that's the best way to create a carnivore diet long term. And I think eating nose to tail involves organs. And if you look at the state of nutritional science, there are so many things in organ meats that are unique, that are not found in other portions of the animal, that we need to function optimally as humans. Now, people would debate that and say, no, when you don't eat carbohydrates, when you're in ketosis, you have different needs for various things. But I think that is a huge leap of faith, and evolutionarily, every culture that I'm aware of eats all the organ meats. And in fact, the liver is sacred. So to just discard that, essentially to discard the organ meats is banking on complete change in human physiology and the way that we use vitamins and minerals with muscle meats. And I think that is a foolish proposition, especially when they're around and they're cheap and they're available. Most people that I've talked to feel better with organ meats. The benefit I see to a simple carnivore diet with meat and eggs, or meat and eggs and bacon, is it's available to more people. I think that's going to be a great sort of elimination diet. But for long-term health, I really strongly believe that organ meats are necessary.
Yeah, and even if not something that people are consuming on a regular basis, at least intermittently to get the nutrients.
And it's hard to know how much and how often, right?
Yeah.
That's a big question. And if you look at the nutrients that are in liver, it's hard to know how much of that we should be eating as humans. And people say, oh, we might need 4 ounces a week, or right now I've been eating 4 ounces a day of liver, and I'm of the opinion that it's very hard, perhaps impossible, to overeat on animal foods of any particular type. And I don't think that there's any evidence that I've seen in the literature for any toxicity related to consumption of any natural whole animal food. But
You can eat too much bear meat.
well,
That was this polar bear thing.
there is this anecdote of people eating polar bear liver, but the science on that is a little bit dubious, and there's a question of whether that was actually related
It's
to
like a myth.
It's kind of one of those urban legends, and like this, I think it's probably related to cadmium contamination in liver potentially, but clinically we don't see vitamin A toxicity when we're getting retinol vitamin A from organs. Perhaps with supplements like retinol vitamin A palmitate, you could get a toxicity, but I've never seen anything in a live human eating a liver organ. I don't think that that's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you have more questions?
Yeah. For someone starting off on a carnivore diet, how much meat do you recommend, like for a female or a male, like per pound body weight?
So if people go to my Instagram or my YouTube, I've talked about how I construct my diet. This is kind of an interesting individualized question. I did something called a carnivore nose-to-tail pyramid that gives people a sense of the variety of things that I eat. It's much more than just muscle meat. Generally, the first thing you start with a carnivore diet is what is your fat to protein macro, and where you draw that line is going to determine how much meat you're eating in a day based on your body weight. The metric that I've been using recently for both men and women is looking at your lean body mass and in pounds, and then eating that many grams of protein per day as a minimum. So that's a lot more than people generally eat, because a lot of the protein recommendations are by kilogram. But for instance, I'm about 170 pounds. I'm maybe 7% body fat. So we could get, you could say maybe 160 grams of protein a day is my minimum. So I am going to try and eat 1.5 pounds. It's about 100 grams of protein per pound of meat. I'm going to try and eat about 1.5 pounds of muscle meat a day to get all the protein that I need. Everything above that for me is fat, but I can vary the amount of protein in my diet based on how I'm feeling. People can experiment with this. I think an issue that people run into sometimes is too much protein and not enough fat. The human body is not going to do its metabolism well on just protein. And so for most people, I recommend starting out at like 30% of your calories from protein and 70% from fat. But we have to remember that fat is 9 calories per gram, so you get to the calculations. But for most people, 1 pound to 2.5 pounds of muscle meat a day is where you're going to fall on a carnivore diet, but that's a big range.
Yeah, big range. One of the things that comes to mind as you're describing this is it takes a lot of education and understanding to process what you just said. You know what I mean?
Well, people are so far away. In your world, that seems normal, but people that we interact with are so far away from that that's a bridge too far.
Yeah, and I'm trying to. What my job is to do is to try to bridge guys like you and the average patient. So, what are your thoughts on? So, me and Brian introduced something called the Sapien Diet, and that's basically very similar, but it's focusing on protein and fat, healthy proteins and fats, focusing on whole foods. And
I love it.
Doing intermittent fasting. What do you think about that as an introduction, or at least a starting point? And being somewhat liberal with like your vegetable consumption and maybe some dairy consumption as maybe a starting point. Or do you think that people need to dive right into the carnivore world and that's really where there should be at? I don't really know the answer to this.
No, I think that that's totally reasonable, and that people are going to have to make that decision individually based on where they are in terms of their own health. I think that if people are really sick with autoimmune disease or chronic inflammation, you may want to cut out the plant foods more rapidly, but I think that it's reasonable to think about ways we can kind of step toward the carnivore diet. We can be carnivore adjacent or carnivore-ish, which is probably pretty much what you guys have created with the Sapien Diet, and I love it. And I think, I was talking with Brian yesterday, and he was like, I eat like 95% carnivore diet, and I was like, yeah, I really like that. Like, it's probably reasonable to eat like 90, 85% of your diet in terms of carnivore. Ben Greenfield is a friend of mine, and he says like, oh, I eat a carnivore diet with modifications, and I'm like, yeah, I love that. Like, you just think that animal foods are the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. That's really hard to argue that, and especially when we think about how plants have toxins and plants are not as bioavailable as animal foods, and the nutrients in plants are not as bioavailable. And we actually get and sort of debunk the myths around the dangers of animal foods, which are essentially completely mythologic fairy tale creatures. There are no real dangers to animal foods if we look into it. There's no evidence for dangers, including colon cancer, the heart disease stuff. Yeah. It just doesn't bear out when we look at the literature. It's just
that's why it makes me think it's a propaganda machine, because that shit, where is that coming from? Like, really someone had to actively come up with these ideas.
Often repeated, poorly understood epidemiology studies which say nothing about real human physiology.
What I love too about what you said is when you're really sick, right? So when you're just looking for the right diet, finding that balance, and maybe, but when it comes to really sick autoimmune diseases, metabolic syndrome, obesity, Christy brought this up on our last podcast. There's one diet that's really been shown to treat medical problems, to even cure medical problems, and that's a ketogenic diet. So, to me, what you're suggesting is going to encourage people to be in a ketotic state, which we know is good for you. We know it because it helps people with epilepsy and malignancies and diabetes, right?
Metabolic syndrome, sure.
Metabolic syndrome. Right. So it's, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that what you're talking about is it's probably how we should all be eating.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, yeah, you're.
So maybe when you call it a carnivore diet, maybe it's a sapien diet. You know what I'm saying? Like you call it us. That was you, I think, that calls us facultative carnivores.
Yeah,
I love that because that's probably what we are.
I think that first term was first coined by Embryo Hearn, but yeah,
I love it.
I think that humans have eaten plant foods throughout our evolution as survival foods, but a facultative carnivore is an animal that will get its optimal human nutrition from animals, and during times of starvation or scarcity of those animals can eat plant foods. You know, we can eat plant foods as survival foods. We will not die if we eat plant foods. However, I would argue that we will not thrive if we eat too many plant foods, and that we can draw that line wherever we want. But you know, I posted on my Instagram today what I'm going to call the Saladino equation, or maybe I can find something less, you know, less focused on me, but maybe the animal foods equation. But it's just a line that goes up from left to right, from 0 to awesome, and along the x-axis is the percentage of our diet that's comprised by animal foods, nose to tail, whole foods animals. And the y-axis is our quality of life, you know, from 0 to awesome or 0 to thriving. And it's just a straight line. And again, it's just my hypothetical construct. But the idea in my mind is that the more animal-based nutrition we get, the better we're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay, but question.
Yeah.
If you do want to include plants in your diet, are there any like safer plants that...
Sure.
Can I add to that question? Because this was my next question too, is... To me, it seems like low sugar fruits have a lot of good things and are better than just, you know, tubers and green leafy vegetables.
What kind of good things are you talking about in low sugar?
Nutrients. I don't know, just less. I don't know, just
less
more,
downside.
There's less downside.
Well,
I don't know. You could speak on it more, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it seems like. Is those low sugar fruits, your avocados, your olives, your cucumbers, your bell peppers, these things seem to, I even feel better eating them than when I'm consuming, you know, broccoli and kale and all that stuff.
Completely agree with that. So the reason I'm sort of holding you, I just want to clarify that point is, I think it's, in my mind, it's pretty difficult to make a case that there's any plant that has a unique nutrient that humans need, right?
Sure.
So when you say like there's good stuff in the low sugar fruits, I would say there's less bad stuff.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean there's
like
good
it.
stuff,
Sure.
right? That doesn't mean there's necessarily good stuff. I don't think there's anything, and if there were, I would gladly tell people about it. You know, I'm not dogmatic, but I'm not convinced that there's anything unique in plants that we need or will benefit from. But I think, yes, low sugar fruits, like I would make a little bit different list of low sugar fruits than you just suggested. I would say avocado, olive, and cucumber would probably be the ones that I would think of. I'm not a fan of bell peppers because they're a nightshade vegetable, and Solanaceae. The Solanaceae genus kind of gets a bad rap, and I throw shade on Solanaceae genus. But in terms of cleaner, less toxic plant foods, let's just reverse the question and say, what are the most toxic plant foods? I think that the plants put the most number of toxins, anti-nutrients, digestive enzyme inhibitors in their seeds. And many people don't understand that seeds, nuts, grains, and legumes are all seeds. And so those, I believe, are the worst offenders. Probably what I should do is make a plant like a plant toxin guide, and like these are the most toxic to the least toxic things. But I think that the most toxic parts of plants are the seeds. Plants don't want us eating their babies. So
it's like sprouts, the same concept behind sprouts.
And that's the second most toxic part of a plant is the sprout, because the sprout grows from a seed and it's very vulnerable. And if you eat part of a sprout, the plant is going to die, right? But once the plant is full grown, an animal can come along and chomp on half of a leaf, the plant's not going to die. But if you eat part of a seed, the plant is dead. If you eat part of a sprout, the plant is dead. So sprouts are quite toxic too. And how ironic is it that broccoli sprouts and broccoli seeds have the highest amount of glucoraphanin, which is the precursor to sulforaphane. And we can go down the sulforaphane rabbit hole, but if people have listened to my other podcasts, they'll know that I feel very strongly about sulforaphane, and it's clearly a toxin. It's not a beneficial thing. So we find the highest amounts of toxins in plant seeds, then plant sprouts, and then in the roots and stems and leaves of plants, right? So you're saying, well, that's everything. And like, yeah, that's pretty much everything, but there are parts of the plants that are sort of left out. I think that if we're looking at plants, the roots may sometimes be less toxic Carrots, perhaps less toxic. Sweet potatoes are pretty high in oxalates. Not a big fan. Potatoes or Solanaceae, again, they have toxins in them. And if you look at the little green eyes on potatoes when they sprout, those have toxins in them. So I'm not a big fan of potatoes, but maybe a little bit less toxic. But the stems and leaves are pretty heavily defended too. Plants don't want us eating those. And then we get to the fruit, which is sort of this different equation, right? And I've kind of joked about this, but I think it's true that, most fruit is designed by plants to get humans to spread the seeds or to get animals to spread the seeds. So you could anthropomorphically describe plants and you could anthropomorphize plants and say, oh, plants figured out that if they make fruit, animals will spread the seed. And so the fruit are generally less toxic in terms of defense mechanisms. Plants, quote unquote, want animals to eat their fruit. That doesn't mean the fruit is good for us. And generally what they figured out is they made the plant fruit even sweeter. So they wanted to sweeten the deal. They didn't just want to make a part of the plant that wasn't toxic. Again, this is anthropomorphizing, but
No, it makes sense.
anthropomorphic. They made a part of the plant that was sweet so that animals would eat it. That doesn't mean it's good for us. And if you look at the nutrition in fruit, I'm not convinced that fruit really has many redeeming qualities. I've described fruit as plant pornography, a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's just like this pinup girl. It's just this seductive thing from the plant that wants you to get, it wants to kind of pull you in. It's a trap, and then you move the seed around somewhere else, and it doesn't really give you anything in the long term. It's not a solid long-term relationship or like a very nurturing partnership. It's just the plants are using us to spread their seeds. There's not a whole lot of benefit to us, and we get fructose, which we know has all sorts of problems in the liver and the brain and changes satiety mechanisms and can affect insulin resistance and is pretty damaging, sugar, different than glucose in unique ways. But there are some fruits that are low sugar, like avocado, olive, cucumber, which are probably less damaging than the high sugar fruits. So if we're going to think about what foods are the least toxic, with my roundabout discussion, we could think about low sugar fruits and perhaps some of the lettuces. But I'll tell you what, you can pretty much pick any vegetable and we can find something that's not great about it. Arugula is very high in nitrates, which are damaging to humans. So maybe you could make a salad out of romaine lettuce and cucumber and olive and avocado, which might be okay. But again, what's the point if you just want to do it for
be a normal human?
Yeah. Well, wait a minute. You're the one that said normal.
I know. I'm just saying in normal society these days.
But what's normal?
But you
want to fit in. Yeah, fine. If you want entertainment, that's okay. But I don't see a lot of redeeming value there. But if people want to do that, that's fine.
I think this comes back to the similar conversation we had about psych, and we won't go there on this podcast, but it's this idea that I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense from a metabolic standpoint, but the eating experience is intimately tied to the human condition. So if you just look at food as medicine, then probably what you're talking about makes a lot of sense to me. But the reality is, at least with most of my patients and in clinical practice, is people aren't trying to make food just medicine. They look for it to bring them together at a dinner table. They look for it to make them feel better sometimes. They look for it as like a centerpiece to their evening, as something an event to look forward to. So I do think that while the carnivore movement is immensely powerful and important in moving the dial on this understanding about what is actual food, like human food, like we're saying, I don't think that it's something that most people will be able to jump on simply because it takes, for me it doesn't, because I get to eat caviar and liver all the time, but for a lot of people, for the majority of Americans, I think it takes a lot of the enjoyment and the pleasure out of it. And while I think part of the message is, hey, food is not always for pleasure, let's stop snacking and making ourselves feel better, there's got to be some middle ground to actually get people to join us, if you will, by incorporating, and maybe that is a good idea to incorporate that low sugar, that guide for the fruits, because it's hard. This is a hard change for people. For some people, it's damn near impossible. I'll use one example. I had a patient recently. She has psoriasis. And she's been seeing 1 million doctors and nothing makes it better. And I'm like, well, when has it ever been better? Has it ever been better? She's got not bad lesions, but elbows, arms, anything. Oh, well, about a year ago, I tried the Keto Diet and they almost went away entirely. But, I finished that diet and now I'm back. And I was like, aha, see, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And when you just make it this keto fad where you're just talking about fat, right? Just keto is like very fat centric. Or if you're just talking about carnivore and it's just meat, I do think you lose people because it's got to be part of an overall structure of living, right? And I think when I follow your social media, you're not just talking about food. You're like lifestyle guy. You're out there surfing, using your body, interacting with people. You're thinking about what you're doing. You're using all parts of your brain, your body. So for me, it's really important when we have these conversations to try to bridge that gap. And I think what you guys are doing in the carnivore movement is actually doing that, even though not necessarily what I can recommend to my patients because it's so extreme for them. I think it's a justification. It's like a thesis of like, look, this is more like this, less like our vegan friends that are falling apart. You see what I'm saying?
No, it is a lifestyle, and I think that food is enjoyable for people, and I think it just brings up a lot of very challenging discussions that are super important to have. Like, why are we using food as reward? Why are we using food as an emotional crutch? Ultimately, people just have to ask themselves the question, what do I want out of my life? Where is my quality of life the most? And the other thing I would say is that animal foods are not unpleasant. Most people, depending on their conditioning and where they're coming from, if you ask them, like, what is your favorite food or what food would you like to have tonight? What food do you have when you're celebrating? They go out to a steak dinner. Well, here's the great news. You can have a steak dinner every night.
Or sushi.
Yeah, like you can have sushi or sashimi.
Bacon, any meat, eggs. People love all the animal foods. Yeah.
People love animal foods, and some people don't. And I would argue that might be some conditioning, but
I think it's a lot of conditioning.
Yeah, but I mean, if people want to celebrate, they celebrate with animal foods, generally speaking. And so, hey, guess what? You can have a steak every night on this diet. You need to eat some organ meats as well, and think about eating nose to tail. You shouldn't just eat muscle meat, but think about it. What you just said. Salmon roe and steak, like that sounds like what a king would eat, right? Like we are eating.
Not anymore.
I know, we are eating the best food.
No, it's like, what is it? What did Trump get for everyone? He got that fast food.
I don't know.
I think it was like McDonald's or something.
Did he really?
Yeah, when he first came to office, he bought everyone McDonald's. It was like a thing. Nastiness.
Yeah. So, I mean, these foods are not unpleasant. I think what it gets to our ideals of like entertainment with food, emotional, treatment
I got
food.
another approach. So another one of my approaches with patients when I suggest this kind of diet is, okay, well, look, I know this sounds crazy, but what about 4 or 5 days a week? You do this crazy thing, and then you let yourself have that 1 or 2 cheat days.
I'm going to talk to you about that.
What do you think about that?
I disagree with it.
Yeah, tell me.
I disagree with it because the thing about a cheat day is it's immunologic sabotage. Like, what is our goal here? Is our goal weight loss? That's different, right? Like,
right. Which is, by the way, most of my patients.
Right. If it's a weight loss goal or an immunologic goal, we have different things. And the reason I think that the problem is this, like, cheat days creates psychological havoc for people.
Yeah.
They think like, oh, I get to have my cookie. I think that we need to create a diet for people that doesn't have them feeling deprived for 4 days out of the week.
Yep.
And then they get to do 3 days where they eat whatever. Like ultimately, if we're achieving good outcomes, that's awesome. And I want to be sensitive to like what helps people lose weight and get to a healthy place. I just fear that if you do the type of diet where you're doing diet and then cheat day, it feels like a diet. Like you said, it's a lifestyle. Yeah. And I want to create a diet, or I hope to be able to help people understand why they could create an animal-based diet that doesn't have them feeling deprived ever, right? And they're going to go through some adjustment. They're going to want bagels, or they're going to want fruit, or they're going to want these things. And it's like, well, why am I eating that in the first place? But I think once you get through that on a carnivore diet, people often tell me they have way less cravings than keto.
Absolutely.
And I think that the cheat days are gonna definitely lead to more cravings, I think, because you can change your physiology for a few days. But then the other thing I was talking about, the immunologic things.
Yeah, it's a little different.
The immune system has a different memory, right? So, the IgG antibodies, the half-life is 21 days. And so it's like, look, your immune system remembers what you ate 20 days ago. And if you have celiac disease, as you know, you can't eat gluten like every weekend. If you have celiac disease and you do a gluten cheat every week, like, what if I only eat like a sliver of bread on Sundays? Like, no, your celiac disease will rage. You know?
But most people don't. That's like 1-2% of the population. It's not really that.
I'm just using it to illustrate
I
the
think
idea
you're
that
right. You're right. 100%.
your immune system remembers these things, right? Like, and so for people that have autoimmune disease or people that are trying to improve psychiatric disease, which I would formulate as autoimmune.
Sure. Or like treating a malignancy,
Right,
or trying to
like-
reverse diabetes.
Yeah,
right?
there's-
Like real.
I think cheat days give people the freedom. I just don't know that it's a good thing. You know, I think that we need to create a diet and we need to dialogue about why do you crave those things in the first place, you know? So,
Yeah, I mean the diet, and I think that emotional eating, that lack of focus on spiritual and mental health in our society is a big contributor to it. You know, I know you're a psychiatric doctor. I'm an internal medicine doctor, but I'll tell you, like 50% of my practice is dealing with psychiatric issues, right? And my number one focus is nutritional change. And they're always like, what? Who cares? And I'm like, no. That's where you start to deal with your depression and anxiety, is how you're eating, how much sun you're getting, how much movement you're doing, you know, and everyone wants a pill or just a counseling. Like, here, let me give you the answer. And it's always this more complicated, convoluted thing that we're talking about and trying to describe. And
it is.
I think it's very, very important. There's no free rides. There's no free rides.
There's no free rides, and I think that because of that, we shouldn't be offering free rides.
Yeah.
You know, we should be very upfront about that. You know, if you want to get well, do the hard work. You know, like don't expect, you know, don't expect it to be easy, but it doesn't have to be impossible, and it doesn't have to be that hard. You know, like there's no free rides, so we shouldn't be offering them. You know,
well,
no
you're
bus
saying
passes.
you're saying the cheat meal. I will say I completely agree with you, and I'd expected you to say that because it makes a lot of sense. But in my experiences, if I can get someone to follow it most days out of the week and then do that cheat meal, and then they feel really shitty on that cheat day or the day after, it proves my point, and I can get people to actually understand what I'm talking about. So while a middle ground is sometimes not consistent with what we really think, it can actually do a lot for patients.
Yeah. Well, you got to meet them where they're at. And I think I would never call it a cheat day. I would never.
Well,
that's all the
no.
It's just that's the psychological part you're talking about, where it creates like, I'm off my diet. There's all these negative associations with that. Instead, I say we eat a nutrient dense diet. We eat a Sapien diet. It's a nutrient dense diet. It's mostly animal foods, and we have some, you know, safer nutrient dense plant foods. And on the weekends, maybe you eat a little less nutrient dense.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, so you're a little more liberal, which means, maybe doesn't mean you're going to McDonald's,
right?
But you're just like, like, if your favorite food is like potatoes, it's like, you get to have some mashed potatoes on the weekend, but that doesn't mean you're cheating. It just means you're being more liberal, and you're just not as getting as nutrient dense for that time.
I think if you create the idea of cheat days and you start using that verbiage and you create that mindset, then people aren't going to stay on their good diet those 4 days a week for the rest of their life. They're going to be like, screw it, I'm just going to cheat every day. And just, I don't think we
That's when I start that good old metformin.
Right. Yeah. You and Peter Attia. Yeah. It's like,
guess we read that same animal study.
yeah. I mean, it's just like, I don't want people to feel like they're in jail. I think if we put people in jail, eventually they're going to get out of jail. Yeah. And they're going to go crazy, and I don't think it works.
I just love that what's happening in this community, to just make this even a conversation. Yeah. 2 years ago when me and Brian first started this project, I was literally looked at as the crazy doctor in the hospital. And yet I was getting fitter in front of everyone's eyes. And now 2 years later, I will tell you, there's a handful, like 5-6 doctors on this diet, losing weight, feeling better. And it took a lot of conversations of, hey, let me send you this text message on this, Verta Health study, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, it really took legwork.
It takes time.
And so I think we're in the infantile stages of really changing the nutritional recommendations, and not just this country, but in Western society. I think the smart people know what we're talking about. And it's just going to take time for the old guard to let their strangle. Or maybe I'm wrong, and the corn and the food companies have such a stranglehold that they will squash it. I don't know. That's like a fear. That's like a real fear.
What do you think? Are we on the upswing, or what's going to happen?
I don't think you're going to be able to hold truth down. I think that people, it's not just doctors, it's patients, and God, it's sad that it's even that it's even a question, but I feel like it shouldn't even be a battle for the hearts and minds of people. But in some ways, I fear that it could be. But I think that there's a lot of propaganda out there, and I think that there's enough people that are finding incredible improvements in their health that is not going to be able to be ignored. And it's not just. And I think on the flip side, people are finding difficulty with plant-based diets, and that's not going to be ignored either. Right. And so, the truth will. People will figure it out, it's not going to happen as quickly as we would like it to happen.
Maybe by the time we have some grays, then they'll be like, oh, those guys kind of know what they're talking about.
Right.
He quotes a lot of studies, but the gray hairs, now I'll believe what he's saying. I'm telling you, man, it's going to be something stupid like that.
Yeah.
It's going to be something stupid
Once
like
you're
that.
older.
Do we have more questions before we go?
There's some interesting coffee on a carnivore diet.
I'm drinking. Paul doesn't like that I'm drinking coffee.
We can talk about coffee.
Okay.
Any other? Give us 3 topics, and then we'll
pick the favorite.
Yeah.
Coffee. How to make it sustainable, economically, so cost.
That was
me. And
Can I jump on that? Can we go?
Yeah.
This is a question I have for you, and I didn't get it. Maybe I missed it in one of your podcasts, but I have a lot of patients that come to me and they're like, I eat only organic, and if I am eating beef, it's only grass fed, and if it's only free range chickens, and so then I'm like, oh well, you should eat a carnivore diet, and I'm like, oh, so only grass fed. So where's your position on, is a non-grass fed steak okay? Does it have to be only the highest quality meats and eggs?
No, of course not. I don't want to alienate people. I think people should eat the best quality meat that they can afford and put that into their life. And I think that the more animal products you're eating, especially the more nose-to-tail animal products you're eating, the better you're going to do. And if they are not organic, that's fine. If they're not grass-fed, that's fine. But I think that if people can afford those things and appreciate the value in that, I would recommend that. But I would do the best animal foods that you can afford. And, in terms of financial sustainability, I think it's just the thing I would say to that is I think you need to prioritize food and realize it's the best investment you can make.
Big guys.
Is the gas you put in the car.
Yes.
It's huge. I mean, there's no other system where the gas you put in the car determines what type of car you drive. It's like you go to the gas station and they're like, oh, unleaded plus or super premium. And you drive up in a Honda Civic and you put super premium in your car and you drive away in a Porsche. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. I just put Porsche gas in my car. It doesn't work like that with automobiles, but it works like that with humans. If you put Porsche gas in your body, if you put the best foods in your body, you get to drive a Porsche. You get to have better clarity, libido, energy, athletic performance, weight loss. You get to have
long-term health.
Well, that analogy even rings true. If you have a nice luxury vehicle, they say only put in the high end because the lower end gases will cause it to break down, and then your warranty won't even be covered because you're basically putting shit in a really nice machine,
right?
And the machine breaks down. So I actually think that analogy is perfect. The only change is we're all jet planes, we're all luxury machines, and we all should be eating luxury fuel, top fuel.
Yeah, and you do the best you can with the fuel. You get the best quality animal products that you can in terms of your financial resources.
And you can balance it. So I do this. I buy grass-fed beef when I can, but I balance it out and make it affordable by getting some ground beef at a cheaper price. I can go to Costco and it's a couple dollars a pound.
Yeah.
So and liver's a couple dollars a pound. So I mix these together.
That's the other thing that we were talking about is these organ meats
are cheap.
You just go to any European market or even a Mexican market, like a local, any of these places, all the organ meats, they're giving them away. They're throwing pancreas at you because they don't know what to do with it. And it's the most nutritious part. And so, it's a lot of it is educating people that the food's out there. And just because it's not in a plastic wrapper doesn't mean it's not actually better than the plastic wrapper white chicken that's useless.
Oh yeah, and then that's the thing. People want to spend $10 a pound on organic chicken breasts, and you're like,
what?
Yeah, that's
chicken's not even nutrition.
That's not the best. That's not the best use of your nutrition, and you don't need to eat organic grass-fed New York steaks every day. But and even within that realm, there are cheaper ways to get very good quality sourced meats and things like that. So,
and those companies are coming. They're bringing This movement is it's all components.
Yeah, it's all coming.
What about coffee? Because coffee is life for many people. And I mean, what was it really going to do, though?
So people say this to me all the time. Somebody on my live feed earlier today said coffee is life, and it's like
That's why I said
think about that statement. Like coffee is like, what do you mean coffee is life? Like you mean you can't get through your day without caffeine? Like why do we need such a nootropic? Like why do we need such a crutch? Like I'm just going to be harsh on you guys right now.
Because life is too crazy. Because we as human animals were not meant to have a phone going all day and then a computer
drive on the 405 in traffic and wake up early.
It's time to go here, time to go there. No, this shit's not normal. I need some coffee. If I was an animal running around the savannah, like collecting food and taking my siestas, I don't need any coffee, but that's not the world. We fabricated a reality that's fucking insane.
And I would argue that coffee is making it harder to deal with that reality.
Maybe.
Because you're kind of like, you say this about alcoholism, but it's like borrowing tomorrow's happiness today. Like you're using caffeine to change your metabolism. You're using these stimulants to change your metabolism. You're borrowing tomorrow's happiness. So you create this real deficit. We know that coffee has many negative things. I say it's clearly a net negative. My first.
Talk about are you talking about the compounds?
I'll talk about it. Okay. But the first thing I would say is, yes, our lives are crazy, but if we need this substance to like just get through it, we need to like look at our lives and kind of just take a step back and say, what is going on here? You know, like why is it so hard to get through our life with that? Do we need to meditate more? Do we just need to back up, etc.? But even beyond that, I mean, coffee has a lot of negative compounds in it that are not beneficial for humans. Caffeine is clearly not beneficial for humans. There is an LD50 for caffeine, you know, like this is a toxin, right? And
it's shown to be good for cognitive function in low doses when used appropriately.
Yeah, as a nootropic for sure. With a back end, decline, and when you get the
crash.
Right. And it also changes lipids. So we know that coffee is going to push triglycerides, probably in a negative way. It's pushing triglycerides up. I would argue that caffeine is a negative thing in terms of lipid health. And then we think that, long-term caffeine causes changes in our metabolism. It's hard to get off of. There's a withdrawal, causes mineral loss in some ways. And then if we move on to the litany of compounds in coffee, we've got acrylamide from the roasting of the beans. You've got ochratoxin growing on the beans. You've got mold toxins. You've got pesticides on the coffee if it's not organic. And then actually
making me thirsty.
in the coffee beans, you have caffeic acid and chlorogenic acid, which have been shown to create DNA breaks, which is a process called clastogenesis. So there's probably 7
One could
things.
also argue that sometimes you need a bunch of little acute stressors to keep your body fighting.
Oh, you want to talk about hormesis?
Hormetic stress.
I don't buy
it's a lot of topics. I don't want to go all over.
Yeah, I don't buy the hormesis argument. I think that there's other healthier ways to do it that don't have a negative downside.
So are you then against nootropics, against drug use, and it's just all food as medicine, lifestyle, not trying to use drugs to help with things?
Well, it depends what you're talking about. Like, what drugs are you talking about? Like molecules?
I don't know, anything. Yeah, I mean,
molecules.
Drugs are drugs. Look, we just arbitrarily make one illegal, for, you know what I mean? It's just all
molecules affect human physiology, and I think that, molecules affect human physiology. Now, I think that it gets into this like gray area. Like, are some plant-derived molecules beneficial for human physiology? Like, I'm not sure, I think that we use them as drugs. We use plant-derived drugs. I mean, metformin is a drug derived from French lily, and so in a situation where somebody has a metabolic syndrome, which I would argue is completely correctable and reversible and avoidable, we can use metformin to benefit humans. I'm not saying that no molecules create benefit for humans. I'm just saying I don't think we need any of these plant molecules to be optimally healthy humans. If we're breaking down, maybe we can use plant molecules as like a patchwork Band-Aid, perhaps in some situations. But I am generally against nootropics. I think they have a net negative benefit, and it goes back to the borrowing tomorrow's happiness for today for nootropics. I think it's a long-term net negative to use nootropics. I mean, I think that some things like psychedelic medications can be helpful in the short term, could potentially be used as like in very controlled settings with the proper set and setting and very important preparation, but I don't think that long-term benefit is achieved through excessive use of plant molecules now.
Well, yeah, excessive use for sure. I do think that drugs and psychoactive substances are an integral part of humans, just like it's like food. Food
throughout history,
food and
coming of age
drugs
ceremonies,
and I think that using psychotropic drugs is it's almost foundational in who we are as humans. Like I think that we probably use psychedelics to evolve a lot of our ideas and about what's right and wrong and how to live our lives. And I think that caffeine's part of this story. I mean, look, they've even used cocaine in low doses by sucking on the leaf to stimulate themselves. And I don't know, it's not about net negative or positive. I'm just saying that drugs are a part of our lives. Even the synthetic ones are a part of our lives, and food can be used as a drug the way we are trying to use it. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to manipulate our diet so that it's giving us more energy. We're using it like a drug. It's medicine. And I think that drugs used thoughtfully, whether they're animal-based or whether they're natural or even synthetic, there's a huge benefit to it. And I think everyone's different. There is no answer for everyone. And some people might respond powerfully to a carnivore diet and some people might not. And that's tough because I feel that most people should be eating an animal-based diet. But I think if you take your average 40-year-old in America and put them on a carnivore diet, you're going to have problems with some of them.
Why?
Because they're metabolically damaged, because they've had toxins exposure for their whole life, because their cell membranes have been replaced instead of natural cell membranes with weird plant and seed oils that they've been fed since they were kids, and it screws up their receptors and their signaling pathways, and their gut microbiome is changed because of all this. And so I just think that we're so far gone that we have to find a balance. And I think drugs are going to be part of that. And that's why, there's a role for metformin, there's a role for it.
Yeah, I think we disagree on some of that just in terms of the way we see the process going, but I'm not sure. I'm not convinced of it,
No, it's a philosophical idea.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. I'm not convinced of it. I'm not convinced that the drugs actually create long-term net benefit. And I think that's what we have to look at. Is there a real benefit to it? I don't know. I mean, yeah, if somebody's not going to change their diet, metformin might be a good thing, but
that's the reality is most people aren't going to be able to do what you're suggesting.
Sure.
That's the reality. So you got to find a balance.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in the middle here. We got to wrap this up, but I like Paul's stance on it. It's like this. He lives it too. I've been with him for a lot time lately, and he's not messing around, and he does what he says. But he's like the extreme case. And then this is ideally what we should do. And I get his point. Like ideally, I wouldn't drink coffee, and I'll try giving it up. But it's like it's integrated into my life, and I look forward to it. And I could say that I could do without it, and that I could be just as happy, and just now I just have to get more time for my sleep, and build around it. So you're going after this is the ideal way to do it, and you're saying this is what reality is, and patience you do it.
I mean, no, I agree with your ideology, right? My practice is different, and I'm trying to find the in between. And also figure out if it's carnivore or if it's more like Sapien, or if everyone's different and we need to figure out some genetic testing that's going to change this whole freaking conversation in 10 years. You know what I'm saying? And we all know that that's a possibility too. So we'll see. At least we're not eating a low fat diet 5 or 6 times a day. You know what I'm saying?
No? Yeah. Well, I think we should end with that. This might be really confusing to people who haven't heard about carnivore. We're trying to open this show up to new people. So, see what Paul has to offer online on his Instagram. You can contact him. Say your email and your website and all that.
So probably the best place for people to get a hold of me is my website. It's paulsaladinomd.com. Last name is spelled like salad and dinosaur, Saladino. So paulsaladinomd.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there. I've got a podcast, which is Fundamental Health with Paul Saladino, MD. I'm on Instagram at Paul Saladino, MD. And those are the best things. If people want to get a hold of me, you can find me through the website. My email address is paulsaladinomd@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I got a YouTube channel, which is Paul Saladino, MD.
Yeah, you can learn more about it because this stuff is a little overwhelming if you're coming from a standard American diet. So just think about it. Think that animal foods are not harming you, and that maybe the plant foods are the things that are harming you. So
yeah, what a crazy
keep an open mind, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.